If you've been spinning your wheels trying to decide whether a home office media server, a family photo archive, or a small business backup solution is finally worth the investment, you're not alone. Most people want something that'll just work, reliable, easy to live with, and good value for the money without having to become a networking PhD just to get it running. I spent a good chunk of the last week digging through forums, watching unboxing videos, and reading the fine print on a few similar units before I finally pulled the QNAP 6-bay Thunderbolt NAS out of the box. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. What makes this unit different from the usual big box NAS you see on retailer shelves is that it arrives with 6 8TB Seagate IronWolf drives already installed and RAID 5 configured. In theory, that means you can flip the power switch, hook it up to your Mac or PC via Thunderbolt, and start copying files. No need to hunt down compatible SSDs, buy a separate RAID controller, or spend hours in the QNAP web UI scratching out a volume layout. That's the core promise. A plug-and-play high-capacity storage solution that feels like a single external hard drive, but with the redundancy and speed of a true NAS. The first thing I checked was how hassle-free the setup actually is. The box opens to reveal the 6 drives already seated in the bays, the RAID 5 array pre-built, and a few simple cables. A Thunderbolt 3 to Thunderbolt 3 cable, a power brick, and a quick start guide. You connect the Thunderbolt cable to your MacBook or to a Windows workstation with a Thunderbolt 3 port, plug the power adapter in, and power on. The system boots into QNAP's QTS operating system, and a pop-up on your computer asks if you want to mount the NAS as a network drive. Within 5 minutes you have a 40 terabytes volume showing up in Finder or Explorer, ready for a copy and paste. That speed isn't just marketing fluff. The i3-8100T processor paired with 8 GB of DDR4 RAM handles simultaneous 4K video streams, large photo libraries, and a handful of virtual machines without choking. When I moved a 120 GB folder of raw camera files from my workstation to the NAS, the transfer averaged around 500 MB per second over Thunderbolt, which is well within the expected 10 GB ceiling of the built-in Ethernet port. For anyone who edits footage directly from the storage, say, a freelance videographer who needs to render 4K clips straight to the drive, that throughput feels realistic, and not just a spec sheet claim. The included IronWolf drives come with a 3-year rescue data recovery services plan. In practice, that means if one of the 6 drives fails, you have a direct line to Seagate's recovery team. It's a small safety net, especially for a RAID 5 array where a single drive loss is tolerable, but a second failure before rebuild can be catastrophic. Knowing that Seagate will step in reduces the anxiety that comes with managing a multi-drive setup. Now let's talk about the practical strengths. First, the capacity itself. 40 terabytes is a sweet spot for a family that keeps a growing library of 4K movies, high-resolution photos, and game backups. You can store dozens of complete 4K video projects on a single volume without worrying about hitting a wall. Second, the dual Thunderbolt 3 ports let you daisy-chain a second NAS or a high-speed external SSD for additional scratch space, which is handy in a studio environment. Third, the 10 GB Ethernet port means you can plug the NAS into a 10 gigabit switch and serve data to multiple workstations at once without saturating a typical 1 GB home router. But there are trade-offs that matter once the initial plug-in excitement fades. The QNAP's QTS interface, while powerful, is not as intuitive as consumer-grade solutions like Synology's DiskStation Manager. You'll spend at least an hour learning how to set up user permissions, schedule snapshots, and enable remote access if you want to stream your media from outside the house. That learning curve can be a barrier for someone who simply wants a drop-in storage box without any admin overhead. Also, the unit's 8 GB of RAM is decent for most media workflows, but if you plan to run heavy Docker containers, multiple virtual machines, or frequent real-time transcoding on the fly, you'll quickly bump into the memory ceiling. QNAP does allow you to upgrade to 64 GB, but you'll need to purchase a compatible solder module, which adds extra cost and another step. Thermal performance is another subtle but real concern. 6 spinning drives generate a fair amount of heat, and the NAS relies on passive cooling with a built-in fan that only ramps up under load. In my tests, the ambient temperature rose to about 38 C after a couple of hours of continuous 4K video writes. It didn't trigger a thermal shutdown, but the fan became audible. For a quiet home office or a bedroom studio, that might be a nuisance. If you're putting the box in a cramped server rack, you'll want to ensure adequate airflow or consider an external fan. Power consumption is something I checked as part of the value for money equation. The unit draws